Almost thanks, I'm just gonna get logged in. Okay, thank you. What's up?
Okay, September 9th, I'm going to call the Selectmen's meeting to order. The first order of business is to salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I guess the first order of business is the public hearing on the snow, moving snow into roadways ordinance.
Excuse me, I have extra copies of that I meant to put out if anybody wants a copy.
Does it mean a copy?
Sorry about that.
You want to read it into the record? Yes. The purpose of the ordinance is to prohibit, it shall be unlawful to plow, snow blow, push, shovel, or purposely move or deposit in any manner snow into or across a traveled portion of any town road. Exclusions, this ordinance shall not apply to town and state of New Hampshire vehicles engaged in wintertime road maintenance. The penalty is $50 per violation. And I'm going to open it up to public comment if there is any. People obviously all go to Florida. Any comment from the selectmen?
Other than I move approval of the ordinance.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have another ordinance. The next order of business is public input. You have a public.
Oh, no, okay.
Joe?
Now that we have another ordinance, when is that updated? On either on the website or in the actual books? These ordinances that we create, I still have books like from when I first came here and I never got extras. How long does it take for it to get added to electronically?
I'll have to check with our IT department. It shouldn't take that long.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Somber crowd. The next item for business is approval of minutes. The first minutes are the public meeting on Monday, August 26th. Do you have any changes?
I'm all set.
I move approval as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next is a non-public from the same date, August 26th.
I'm all set.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And first appointment is police facility study and design warrant article, Chief Shigori. There you are.
Yeah. So the question is how much we have left from the original to continue on with the plans. Diane found of the original 30,000. We had a contract for 19.5, so that's all that we could encumber the next year. Of that, we still have 2,848 or something like that left. But the question comes up, the original retainer was a check for 2,000 that was supposed to be applied to the final bill. So the question is, do we have 48.48 or 28.48 and left that we can spend? And that still isn't really, well, 48 is closer to what we've hoped we'd have to get some more things done.
What we're looking for in terms of total design?
I thought when we had that meeting a few weeks ago, it was, well, maybe it was a month ago, it was close to 10,000, I thought, is what was needed to, we thought we had 10,000 left, and then turned out we didn't, because we couldn't encumber the rest of the money, so. If I recall, I know I forwarded all the emails, I think,
Yep, you did.
and, you know. I'm not sure that the architects know that we have.
I didn't follow the thought process with respect to the retainer. If we paid the retainer already,
Yes,
then it's not still outstanding. So this is a 2,800 or 4,800 that's left. We already paid the 2,000, we already paid the 2,000. Now, if they intended not to apply that against the work they've already done, then maybe they do have additional time available. I mean, in my mind, that's a question on their end, not on our end.
right.
Because I believe we sent them the check when we first started the process.
Right, that's what Diane found, is that we'd sent them a check for 2,000, and it said in the agreement that would go towards by their wording, would go toward the contract. That retainer would go towards the last check.
The check we sent to them was $2,250, correct?
There you go.
And we have a balance in the account of $2,828.
Okay, 2828.
And that's, I trust them.
Right.
So far, they've gotten paid
16,000.
$16,672. That should it's kind of the money that we had.
And originally, there was 19,500 in the PD's facility study, so that comes out to 2828.
Right. Have you approached Alba at all about the $2,000?
I did mention it to them, and I think you got a copy of their response back. It was kind of,
Yeah, it's in the purple folder.
I'm looking at the purple folder.
Oh, okay.
the question whether or not that had have been part of the 19,000.
Right.
So they're asking if the retainer's been encumbered. No, because we already paid the retainer. So it was paid, didn't need to be encumbered, it was paid last year.
I think the question was the encumbered amount 19,500 including that retainer? In other words, did we actually only encumber in net? We can only encumber enough to cover the contract. And if we already put out the $2,200, did we really only encumber, 16,800 or thereabouts in net? That's the question, I think, how to phrase it back. How to put it.
That's the most, is this the most recent
Yes.
copy?
Take it.
I know.
No,
I saw
at
that.
12/17/18, we, the selectmen encumbered $19,500. So that's what was encumbered at 18. 16,672 has been paid to Alba, which leaves 2828. But of the 16,600, $2 grand was a retainer, so they've already received the 2,000.
Right.
So the question is, can we apply the 2,000? Their response is that they still can't get it within 20, the cost estimates, within 20%.
Right.
Okay. But we need to know what they can do for $4,800, basically.
Okay.
Right.
Because I think their question was that 2,200 part of the 19.5? Is I think how I interpreted Philip's question.
Right.
Because,
It was, because we only encumbered 19.5. So that's all, would have to have been part of that.
right, but,
That was the total contract amount, including the retainer, right?
right, so we still would have to, theoretically, if it was 19.5, we're putting 2,200 down, we would, 17,300 would be what we have to complete it, in a sense.
Right.
So the question is, do we have that 2,200? Was
Well, we
that?
already paid them.
I know okay. I'll get back to them saying that it's, it's 2,200 plus the 28, so it's
$5,000.
5,000.
Right.
So
What can
we
you
did-
do for
what we're gonna
$5,000?
do for that. Their question was whether or not that 2,000 had to come out of that 19.
Well, you can get with Diane, and I'm sure it went out in the form of a check. I just,
Yeah. They understand, they got it, but the question is that part of the,
it is, it's part of the 19.5. That's all the money we encumbered.
okay,
And any money that happened in 2019, we made this.
okay.
So, and any additional costs beyond that, we need to look and see if there is other money in the budget this year that we can apply against that and get the work done.
Right.
And there may be something that we budgeted money for that we know we're not gonna spend on that because things changed.
There is, because, and I don't know if you saw my CFP submissions, because Tom recommended that we replace the cruiser computers next year, I was gonna not do the modems in the cruisers this year.
Right.
So that's several $1,000s right there.
Okay, so there's,
So,
what I'm suggesting is we can assign other money to it if we have it available. But it's prudent on our part to specifically identify where we're gonna take that money from, so we don't keep spending it over and over, and then at the end of the year, got a big problem. So it sounds like you've identified some money that you know you're not gonna spend, that, you know, we can put together an approach to.
yeah, we
Also,
haven't, we haven't reviewed all of the budgets. I mean, we've got, still got $40,000 in government buildings. How much of that's going to get spent? And, jeez. Yeah, we still got some money in the budget. So,
well, and there are a number of budgets that people haven't spent for the project. But I'm looking at line items where we budgeted money and we know that we're not gonna spend that money on that task this year because, for instance, the situation changed with respect to your cruiser computer systems.
So I tell them that as far as our understanding, we have the 28 plus the checkers for the retainer for the total, and we'll see what else we need.
right. And we still, I don't think we still got a firm number from them, what it's going to cost if we got everything we wanted.
Okay,
So if we could get that, that would be good. Then we know what we're looking for.
okay. I think they were, I kind of get the sense they're putting it back, well, what do you have, and I can develop what I need. I can tell you what I can do for that, if you will, but I'll put it back to them as to, we need a number. I think they shot out like 9,000 to 10,000, they could get better numbers, if I recall from
So we
that.
may have to find $5,000.
Yeah.
You know, it's not an impossible number.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Unless you have something else.
That was it?
Okay. The next item for business is the Union Wharf and Lake Road Wharf, Tyler Phillips, Horizon Engineering, and Jack Parsons. Tyler here?
This is help to.
There you go.
handouts. Approach the board.
Sure. Neil.
Thank you.
Just the record.
Something to do, I can leave for anyone else wants copies. Okay, well, good morning. My name is Tyler Phillips. I've been formerly met you all. I'm actually Tyler Phillips Jr. You guys may know my father, who's served on a couple boards here. I've discussed with Jack the current state of affairs of we're trying to work on permitting the piers, and we've gone about as far as we can without making some, I think, critical decisions. So I think he thought it best for us to come in and kind of give you an update of where we stand. We were contracted to do permitting to repair both the Pier 19 wharf, also known as Union Wharf, and looking at permitting a repair to Lake Street as well. So, and Jack, I don't know if you want to say anything.
Yeah, it's the biggest issue here is the ownership of Union Wharf.
Yeah.
How do we solve that? Is it because the record burned 100 years ago when the courthouse burned?
So, I mean, do you guys want me to give you a quick background? I don't know how much time I have, so that's 5-10 minutes.
Go ahead.
Okay. So again, there was the two repair areas. At Union Wharf, there's 3 desired elements. There, and you can see from your plans, so that's a bird's eye view, of course. Installing a seasonal canopy at the end, that's pretty much straightforward. That's a nice, an optional thing. It's not required, but it was discussed as that should be straightforward in terms of permitting that. It's a seasonal canopy. You can see that that's at the end of the wharf, proposed at the end of the wharf. Dredging the north side of the wharf itself, there's been apparently some sand has gotten in this area. It's still used for docking, and it's kind of shallow. It's not, the state would normally allow you to dredge that given its depths. It's less than 3 feet. I guess it's a little less used, but it may be used by barges, so it may be an important usage of that north side of the pier. And then lastly, the real bear, and that's repairing the pier. And so there are really three sections to this pier. There's a portion which has a timber bulkhead retained by pilings, vertical pilings, and then it's infilled with gravel. And the construction is such that to keep the pier stable and from going outward under the weight of equipment and soil, there's cables that go from one piling on one side across. And if you turn a couple pages, you can kind of see a degree of it, just again, a bird's eye view of that construction technique, which shows that it's cable tied across. That, it works pretty well. The challenge with that is trying to repair the bulkhead. What's happened apparently is ice in the wintertime has rotated the pilings such that now some of the wooden timbers that hold back the gravel infill have popped out, and you're losing some of the gravel. So over time, that'll just continue to wash away. So it's in need of repair, and the town came up with an approach to, rather than try to reconstruct, as you might imagine, trying to reconstruct and put some of these boards back would mean removing the gravel, and you're running into those cable ties that are so important. So the town suggests an approach which, again, you can see on the details here, that really works. It's probably the easiest and most straightforward approach. It's and that's on this drawing here. Again, bird's eye view. Here's a side view, what we call a section view. So looking down on it, the town, you can see the extent the existing bulkhead stops here, that light gray line. And here are the pilings, these are about 14 inches. The town suggested, well, maybe we can just replank outside, put up new posts for securing boats, infill the middle, this void space of about 20 inches with some stone, and we're good. We'll just extend outward. We also came up with an alternate one, I'll explain in a second. But the state, there's a big difference between whether or not you're rebuilding in the same footprint, according to the state, there's a big difference, with rebuilding in the same footprint or extending outward. Now you might consider this to be minimal. It's only a 20-inch extension, and this would be on both sides, but 20 inches. But the state owns the bed of the lake, and so, or it's in their trust. So when you occupy a new portion of the lake bed, you have to get permission from the state. It's a little different from a dock that's kind of hovering above the ground, but when you actually have something founded on the lake bed, you're actually removing part of their property. It becomes, you go through a process called a grant and right to occupy a bed of the lake. Towns looked into this, the states looked into it. They can't find a grant and right for the original construction of Union Wharf at Pier 19. And much of this talk is basically focusing on Pier 19 because if we figure out Pier 19, Lake Street's a lot easier issue because it actually is mainland. It was built on land. So again, focusing on Union Wharf, where we don't have that, you might think, well, geez, we don't have a grant and right for the original, even if it was done in the 1800s, however long ago, we don't have that permission. Is the state going to make us remove it? Of course, they won't make you remove it, but they say, listen, you're grandfathered for that footprint, but not an extension outwards. So we went through a number of meetings and coordination with the state, and finally had to elevate it above. If people retire on us, and all sorts of things have happened in the past year. So we said, listen, we got to get some real answers here, because we met with them and they hemmed and hawed and said, well, maybe you could try a third option, which is if you do have a grant and right, you treat this like land and it's like a retaining wall, and the state does let you occupy 6 inches of new lake bed to reface a retaining wall. Well, that turned out not to pan out because the town doesn't have that grant. So we talked with Rainey Pelletier, who's a resident of Wolfboro, actually, and he's the assistant director of the Water Division, the Wetland Bureau's boss, Shoreline Bureau's boss. And he said, all right, I reviewed it. He said, I don't like the dredging on the north side. He said, the dredging on the north side, you guys talked about that component. He said, I don't like that because we've issued a lot of permits for dredging out boathouses there. There's a lot of sand migration. And he said, if you dredge that out, I don't think it'll last very long because the sand migrates right across there and would fill back in. So they don't like the dredging option on the north side. One. Number two, he's fine with canopy. Number two, he said, I don't think that we can, without a grant and right, you can't extend that footprint outward. He said, you really have two options. You can disassemble it and rebuild it in the same footprint, which is obviously expensive. You can seek a grant and right for the original footprint and at the same time ask to extend it out. That process goes to the Governor Council. So you'd have to meet with your executive counselor, who's Mike Crines. Yeah. So you have to meet with. It was suggested that you float it, that you meet with him and discuss that option. If you're going to pursue a grant and right first, see if he will support it. If he does, the next step is he brings it up for discussion at executive councilors meeting. If they vote to approve it, then you're now you have permission to do what we originally intended, which was actually now repair it. You still have to go through the permitting process, but at least you could extend. You have some flexibility in extending it outward up to whatever you seek. But say it was 2 feet out. So that's one approach. We have come up with a variety of iterations. You can see if you roll through there. There's different options to address this, but I think at the end of the day, the town, we're kind of at a critical juncture here to decide whether or not the town wants to rebuild in place, and if so, if they wanted to rebuild in place, repair and replace the whole thing, it'd be a lot of money. you probably end up with a superior product, but that would be such that you could build in place and you would not need to pay for wetland mitigation.
How much?
Mitigation is $200 a linear foot. So if so you only need mitigation if you're going outward expansion. If you're keeping the same footprint, no mitigation.
What about to rebuild in the same footprint?
No mitigation needed. If you rebuild outwards, you're at $90,000 to $200,000 in mitigation alone, just for the right to do that. I don't know if the state would ask for some, a dollar fee or something for that lake bed portion. So I haven't looked at all the costs associated with the grant and right. It's kind of a stepwise process. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, but neither option is ideal, obviously. I think it's, my suggestion is to at least pursue, see what the state, what Cryans would say for the grant and right, and see if that's a possibility. If it is a possibility, then I think it would make sense to get some cost estimates for the various options and then proceed from there. Again, I think construction costs would be considerably lower. If you get a grant and right and you're allowed to build outward, the construction costs would be lower, but you'd be facing mitigation. And maybe for a product that's, it would look as rustic as it does now, but it may not have the longevity. You'd be building outward, and you're really kind of relying on another type of retention outside of our existing retention, the wooden plankings. It's not ideal, but I think you could end up with something that's it's strong and durable, and it wouldn't be as environmentally intrusive, I suppose. Just driving sheeting is one option. That's another one. Not all that attractive, but you could do that and contain it structurally sound, or going with the timber bulkhead approach, which is really refacing it, which would be strong, but still subject to some of the ice action. Obviously, we're not going to go back and do the exact same thing that's done before. We have some countermeasures there, but you still might be facing over time some movement of the timbers. So, I throw this out here as it's maybe something I don't know if you can decide today, you want to consider it. I'm happy to come up with some more figures in terms of numbers, but I wanted to get a sense as to if you want to pursue two parallel avenues if I didn't know that was of interest.
So just so I understand correctly, mitigation is required if we are looking at refacing on the outside of the existing piers, is that right?
Sort of.
Yeah.
You can mitigate, if we were able, so these are the two major options we discussed. One of the sub options is if you only reface 6 inches and it's done in the dry, it's considered to be in the same footprint. You wouldn't pay for mitigation there. It would be a minimum impact project. But it seems kind of silly. Most of the advantage of that approach of refacing is just having guiders or guys working with pneumatic and just applying boards. No earthwork, no erosion, none of the in-lake controls. You basically just have people, it's carpentry. As opposed to building outward, in that case, because it's more than 6 inches of extension, you would be facing mitigation. So the state says, yes, you build in the same footprint, you don't have to pay mitigation. You can even go 6 inches outwards if it's done in the dry and you don't need mitigation. But as soon as you're more than this de minimis 6 inches, then at that point, you need to pay for mitigation.
And the mitigation is $200.
A linear foot.
A linear foot.
Yeah, and the linear footage here is,
All the way to both sides.
Not just one side.
well, yes, if we continued out all the way out and around, and that may, that's again an option guys may say want that would be a lot at that point. If you were just extending outward, just that timber bulkhead area, you could cut those costs down, but you'd have a tough time stopping the project there and not be exposing to vulnerability to ice in the future. You kind of want a continuous service, continuous treatment, planking on the outside.
So that's comes to say $200,000 is, yeah.
Or, if they discontinued the easement program where you don't pay money, you actually give them uplands?
So, yeah, there are options to meet mitigation. There's three options. One is you can kind of recreate that type of wetlands, which I don't think we could do because it's a lake, it's too unique. The other is you could preserve uplands near wetlands or shoreline. They typically want it to be like kind. They don't want you to preserve a wetland up on the side of Mount Shaw and say it's equivalent to the same type of wetland that's down in the lake. But I'm not sure that you would have to go find shorefront property to preserve it. That might be a little bit of a stretch, it's so unique. They really prefer just the payment.
Well, yeah, because they need to cover their budget.
And everybody
In
wants
there-
money.
Yes.
In Pelletier, who's just the commissioner, it's not the Lord, is his notion that just the hard surface was grandfathered? Because if you look at the piling placement, if that area is ours, then we don't have to go through a lot of this. do we?
He might say that the piling, the footprint, the 14-inch diameter piling itself they'll say that's kind of a that we're not going to quabble over the diameter of a pier.
Space between them.
It's the space between it. It's because one of the approaches was to plank on the outside of these 14-inch pilings and then put new uprights to kind of lap those boards. So you kind of you extend only out the 14 inches and they say, listen, the 14-inch piling, that's okay, we're not going to count that. But they're not going to say that the footprint is 14 inches parallel to the full length of the pier itself. So, the piling is, but not the.
I mean, that's their position, obviously,
Right.
that's their position. I mean, I think we ought to contact Ryan's.
I agree.
I mean,
Yes, I think that's a reasonable next step.
he's an affable sort.
And through no fault of anyone here, the town has, there are plenty of places where DOT never got doesn't have ownership. They have a right by prescription, that people have used it over time and they have that right. Similarly, I would say, listen, maybe back then someone should have gone to Governor Benning, to Wentworth and said, hey, we need to get a grant and right here, but people built piers for the purpose of commerce and whatever was done there. So I think most people could buy into that story. It just makes sense that we want to make a repair. The approach that we would be faced with is certainly more environmentally intrusive. And this board, the DES, is not, their job is not really in land rights, it's in environmental. So from their standpoint, they should welcome, I think, a repair. And certainly knowing Brian's position would give you those options to decide. And if you'd like, I certainly could come up with a better estimation of what mitigation would cost, or maybe you want to wait on that. But I just didn't want, I think Jackson, our concern is that we're trying to be patient. Patience is running thin, I would say. I want to be responsive to you guys. I want to keep the ball moving, but I also think that it makes sense to kind of do this in a very logical, stepwise way. So pay for it.
I have a couple of thoughts, and I'll just stream of consciousness. First of all, if the footprint were to be replaced with the dimensions that are there now, that's a serviceable dock for years and years to come, correct?
Yes.
That's number one. Number two is there's power that goes out to the boats, the fire boats. That leads to something else. While construction is being done, I'm concerned that the fire department be able to respond to EMS and fire emergencies on the lake in our 40 islands. The other thing is, it's one of the few public boat launches that is right there by that tree. This is my thought, is if a substantial reconstruction goes on, where are they going to stage their equipment? Okay. And the fourth thing is, right now, that store is not an active store. I don't know if it'll ever be a store again, but certainly in the immediate future, we don't have a lot of boat traffic compared to what it was like when that store was was running. I just entered those things into the record. Thank you.
I had just had an opportunity to talk to one of the lake hosts this summer, and I said, "What is a really busy day?" And she said, 36 boats was busy this summer. That was this summer, for whatever it's worth. I asked if they use the other side, and she said, "Oh yes." So again, just for when there are discussions with crimes, it's if you need to make that case. Apparently it is still used. They do still use the other side. So if they're still interested in pursuing the dredging, that this could take on a life of its own outside of DES, where we put in an application to be really strong for something, and we can appeal it and go to the water council if you wish. Not the ideal way of doing things, but again, I think if there is a common sense, the usage of this thing, it's existed. This is not. It has a lot of other functions for the town, not just for private individuals here. And so I think there is a lot going forward or going for the project, whether it's repair or rebuild, that I think we may be able to, with involving crimes, may be able to get back to a common sense approach rather than kind of looking at the rules and saying, footprints and that kind of stuff. So I'm happy to stand by until you guys, I'm happy to participate in it, whatever you guys, let you think about it and then get back to me in a week or so. If that's good.
Right, well, I think we'll get a letter off to Trians and probably copy you on that, so you know where we're headed.
Okay.
And see if we can't set up a meeting with them.
Okay.
And you'll probably need to be there.
And we're obviously gonna need your services for another year, so we need to put some money aside in a budget, so
How much
all
else
work
do we
together.
spend?
We've used a little more, we had a couple phases in our contract. I don't know if this money was only available in 2019, but we've not utilized our whole budget, not nearly.
So-
But what we have done in the task, we had some tasks. We said, hey, we're gonna coordinate with DES, get some answers, go right into design permitting. We've had to use more of our budget for the coordination with DES, but we're not even 25% into our budget. So again, I'm happy if you guys need me to resubmit for a new contract because it expires or.
Yeah, we can set the money aside and carry it over.
Okay.
All right.
Between now
But
and-
an important piece in my mind is, as we're going along, this has become more time consuming and involved for you than what was originally envisioned. So the total cost of the contract, I would think, will probably go up.
It may need to, and we track that effort separately, so we haven't really gotten into design.
Right.
What we've done so far is the first phase, and as I said, we've exceeded that, so we keep that money, track that money separate, and maybe before we jump into design, we'll tell you where we are, and if we need to, we'd like to still live within our design budget, if that makes sense. So why don't we give you we'll give you an update as where we stand and where we are in each of the budgets, and if we need to revisit that.
And if, knowing that our preferred approach is going through the executive council, if that changes anything in your,
Well, it's, I'd rather, we're not, running to the ATF, we're at the end of the budget now. So let's get to the next juncture where we know we're gonna pursue one avenue, and then I can come up with a better cost estimate for that if we need to revise it. But pursuing that, there's too many options at this point.
hopefully we can do that before the end of December.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lake Street?
So Lake Street, again, Lake Street, we're using Union Wharf as more of a test case, because if we can do stuff there, whatever the state's reaction is there, Lake Street is more likely to, I kind of know the answers for Lake Street now, and that is that if you're going to reface it up to 6 inches, you have that grant, you're allowed to do that. If you were extending it outward, you would probably need a new grant and right. So that's, again, if you're using that approach, it really comes down to construction techniques. If you're refacing it 6 inches, you can do that, there's no mitigation. We've come up with an approach, I think an alternate design that might work. And the real thing that hinges on this is whether or not it's done in the dry. And what I think, again, at a meeting, any meeting we have with DES regarding mitigation, we would address this and say, listen, oh, by the way, Lake Street, we want to reface this, but come on, we don't really need, what's the difference? Your difference about requiring mitigation is somehow triggered by the construction technique, and there's no logic behind that. You know, at the end, you have the same product, whether it's done in the dry or the wet, and we would argue that there's less environmental impact. I mean, how can it be beneficial to create a coffer dam to do water areas so the carpenters can stand there and nail in boards? So, in my mind, I think we could argue for either technique, whether we care to do it in the dry or the wet, the same finished product and no mitigation. So I think that would be our case we make with DES, but that would, I'd say again, for economy of time here, it makes sense to get our decision from Cryans on whether or not he supports that. The only thing I guess that would be is if you really wanted to extend that dock outwards, is you could approach Cryans at the same time in this one. That might be, strategy-wise, it might be asking a lot, trying to do both at the same time. So we just kind of have to think about it.
The bay.
So the side of the outside of the big pile.
Yeah, so
Get
see,
the grant right to the outside.
So the idea would be to do a similar refurbishment along this bulkhead to what we were talking about on Union Wharf, which is to put either sheet piling or new boards on the lake side of the existing pile.
The issue is the ice grabs the pilings and
Yeah,
it destroys
timbers.
them. If you have a smooth surface on the outside of the piling, is the ice has a tendency to skip off it.
so it's kind of building a wall in front of the wall.
Right.
And then you infill it with stone. And there's other approach too. I mean, I'm not getting all the details. There's approaches we can meet. I've talked with Fish and Game about ways that we could still extend out and maybe have it count as self-mitigated. If the not the bugs and bunnies, but if the fish and critters can crawl in behind that wall and use that space, really maybe it's better habitat than just a blank wall. You know, a void that's filled with stone and critters can crawl in there, crayfish and all that. I mean, that's really the idea behind mitigation, is you're using up some habitat that will no longer be available. But there are approaches we've come up with a little approach that we could use to potentially as a second option if we meet with a mitigation coordinator and say, listen, we don't want any mitigation. And they say, well, we need something. Maybe we could get by with incorporating that into the project without, paying money. And a lot less cost.
Again, I have a couple of
Okay.
observations being a native. First of all, you're aware what the boundary line is. It's unique with private docks there. Do you know what I'm talking about?
We're far
Well-
away from that, so.
Okay, you're away from
We're,
that.
that's the other side of the boat ramp, so we're away
Okay.
from that.
As you go down the road, there's 2 culverts that empty out.
Mm-hmm.
And when I last checked, about 100 feet down, there's a manhole cover to something. And I've never been able to find out what that is. And no, it's not graded, it's a flat manhole cover. The other thing is, when we're done this project, can that be an impervious surface?
The state would consider it impervious now, so it is impervious now, and they consider it, that little grass strip you mean, the little grass between the road and,
Better to leave it as vegetation.
Right.
better to, we could see, I think, there was a discussion about trying to put,
A deck over it,
A
but
deck
leave
over
it still pervious underneath it.
Okay.
you could deck over it potentially, and then the idea was it might be a little more.
And the state would wouldn't take offense if we paved the road and left grass.
No, not at all.
Okay.
And that's one of the things we talked about in this. which is not necessary, but it may be of interest to the town, it's not necessary for the repair, was to treat some of that water that comes out, the culvert that's pretty close to the boat ramp location, was treat some water in there. And that may be something you throw in the deal to kind of sweeten it with.
Yes.
You say, hey, listen, yeah, we're not, the runoff that would have come off our roadway, we paved our roadway, but look, we're also handling all the runoff from 109 or the church parking lot.
And if we were to address, at the end of the woodwork, where you should still continue out in toward the bay, there could be some work there, or is that a whole other project?
Out further,
On Lake Road or?
Yes. On Lake Road.
Where are you going?
we,
Go as far as where the wood bank,
so we talked about doing this because it was not in as poor a shape,
Yep.
this section, as doing the planking, timbers. In this section, we talked about doing sheet piling, which again,
and go to the end of the wood.
the wood continues on.
Continue down to the end of the wood,
Mhm.
stop right there. Lake Street still continues beyond, doesn't it?
Well, I haven't done the survey, but yeah, I would imagine that right away goes right.
There's a bench out there.
Mhm, mhm.
Is that part of your plan?
It was not. We hadn't planned on going out beyond here. There's a slight, kind of beach. It might have been an informal boat ramp at one time, and I hear stories that it continued all the way out the lake at one point.
I think there was a dock there long
Yeah.
before any of us were.
We hadn't planned on that, Jack.
When,
It's just a
when we
wood
looked
bulkhead
at,
part,
when we
yeah.
looked at this project, it was along the existing wall to the
Correct.
end of the existing wall, and no extension into the lake, which is what you're talking about.
Correct. There are a bunch of
That's a
boulders.
whole,
Yeah,
that's a
part of
whole,
it's river and part of it's lake, so there's a
Yeah.
couple different rules, so.
yeah.
Clear in my mind.
Any other questions?
I'm good, how about you guys?
I'm all set.
Yeah, I think that's,
Thank you.
thank you, Tyler.
And we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
We want to go forward with Lake Street, right?
With what?
Lake Street.
With Lake Road.
We want to go forward.
Well, as he mentioned, they're tied together, okay? So the issues are maybe not as severe, but they're the same or similar.
They're
So-
similar, yeah. It would be helpful to get a read. Not the crying step is not necessary here for this, but I think Crying's and then was getting a better
And you're
sense.
saying that where that's on the mainland, we didn't need that right of title to that dock on Main Street?
Right, that's my understanding is that, yeah, it's always been part of land, so, so yes, to build the same footprint or out 6 inches, you don't need any granting right. If you wanted to extend it out more than that, you would need a granting right for that new area, but not the existing underlying footprint where currently.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Next item of business is an update from our code enforcement officer, the Honorable Jack Parsons.
Yeah.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. So as of today, we have 101 building permits, 12 new homes, have done 325 inspections. Just so people know, the building code changes on the 15th of September to the 2015 version of the IRC, the IBC, the IECC, which is the International Energy Code, the IMC, which is the International Mechanical Code, the International Plumbing Code, and the International Existing Building Code, as well as swimming pool and spa rules, and the New Hampshire has some amendments in there, so that change is actually next Monday. So it'll be going from 2009 to 2015.
And have you noticed any substantive changes?
There's a few with lightweight construction on the floors, which is I-joists, trusses, that type of thing. They have to be protected now, so anything less than a 2 by 10 traditional timber, and I joists now they have to be protected, so that means either you have to sprinkle the basement, fireproof them, or sheet rock the basement ceiling. So that's a big change there. There's some changes in deck building. There's a little bit of a change in energy code, building insulation, and just minor tweaks here and there. But the major one is the floor system.
Electrical changes.
Electrical is totally different. That's actually NFPA, so that's already in cycles every 3 years. So.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Anything else?
Now, you have some little projects going on, right?
I do, there's some windows, some small windows being done at the town office. I'm probably gonna look to getting a price of painting that for next year. It's about due for a paint job.
Painting the town.
Town office, yeah. This building's not too bad, it's a couple of touch-ups, but this one held up a little bit.
ETA on the generator for the.
I talked to Scott for the highway garage, and it's actually, the generator's not even in yet. They had a real backlog of that size generator. The bigger one at the highway, the transfer station was no issue, but smaller ones, everybody wants them. So the site has been prepped, Jim moved all the sand and stuff that was there, so, and Easton's on board as soon as I know when it's coming, it'll,
Yeah.
within a couple of weeks. it'll be-
Well, Scott's done a good job with all the
Yeah.
other ones. I saw the entrance here, that he replaced it, a nice job.
Yeah, that's all been changed to the generator, yeah. There's a beach in the south front, but I've sprayed it 3 times, and I think it's empty now, so.
No.
God, I hit one with my mower the other day. It's done to have
Now,
to
we're-
work tractor.
We're doing some external lighting on this building too.
Yeah, I'm just gonna rewire it so, and change some of the heads so they're all go on the timer, so you have one in the back and then the 2 on the front. We'll change it to the different fixtures.
And are we gonna be able to extend it like back around on the back driveway?
We'll get one on this peak here, because the attic's all open, so we'll have to get up in there anyway. So there'll be one, pretty much 4 sides of the building. We're not gonna shine too much on the front.
Looks good.
Okay?
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Next item of business is the library update for Mr. Sarles. And Gordon Hall.
Thank you.
So as you can see, August was another busy month. Busiest so far this year in terms of circulation. And people were still reading a lot at the beach. On the patronage side,
Can we know that because the books are coming back wet?
actually, some of them are, yes. It doesn't matter. On the patronage side, we issued 13 new library cards, 6 local adults, 6 youths, and 1 Wolfboro temporary card. Wolfboro is now closed for 3 weeks, and we are again helping them out with their interlibrary loan pickup and drop off. And that temporary card is because they're closed for 3 weeks. I'm sure we'll probably get a few more. Under the meeting room use, down the last line there, you can see that that has dropped off substantially in the last couple of months. And in fact, after today, the only people using that space will be Story Hour and our reading groups. The plan is today, I think, to take off about 10 feet of the roof and back, build us a temporary wall inside, so we'll have about 1/3 of the room to use, which will be different. Under the income building fund, that $27,2995 is new gifts, pledge payments, but pledge payments are continuing to come in. And the Friends of the Library had a hugely successful event on Saturday night, as those of you who were there, I think, will attest. And I think there's not gonna be a problem paying their $10,000 pledge off. So that's good news as well. I don't really have anything else.
What do you charge for out-of-town library card?
$30.
$30?
Yes, but we're not charging the temporary withdrawal people anything.
And that's an annual fee?
Yes, it is.
A disincentive for leaving?
Well, we don't want people who aren't our taxpayers
I don't
using
want
our
either.
facility resources without paying for them, so hence the charge.
So no drop off in patronage due to construction?
No, well, I mean, the library is fully operational and open right now. Except we did have to empty out the meeting room, so most of the 7, 8, and 900s are in boxes in that container across the street right now. So our interlibrary loan requests are probably going to go up just because that material is inaccessible for the next months.
Great. Any questions for Ms. Sarno?
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Can I, yeah, Jordan's gonna come up, do you wanna stay? or-
Sure, I'll stay.
Okay.
I'll move down and Dallas.
Jordan, as chairman of the trustees, that's what I was gonna ask you. You have public service hours available for people that need to volunteer?
Not at the moment, we don't have any volunteer opportunities.
Let's talk to gentleman about money. Not looking for any, but how we're trying to get rid of it. Our first invoice from Bound came in for work that was done in July, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle because there was a little bit of miscommunication as to how they were going to bill us. Gave the bill to Diane, hasn't been paid yet. That was $111,000.
Well, we signed the check on Friday.
Oh, you did sign a check
Yeah.
on Friday?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, then that's,
Right.
all right.
That's when we signed checks, so
Okay, because it was as
we
of,
checked on Wednesday, it wasn't paid.
thank you, all right, so that's good, because, well, quite frankly, we say, I don't know, $1,000 is not an inconsequential bill. Got a second one for $132,000 that we gave to Diane on Friday, or Thursday. Was it? The way we set things up, we're gonna take all the money from the capital reserve fund first, correct?
Right.
Then our money, then the taxation. Can we just close out the capital reserve fund? Or does it, you have to have an invoice in order to do that by statute? Or is it by precedent?
Oh, you mean just, where would the money go?
It would go into the town funds pending the bill coming in from,
Yeah, we
the
can
town.
do that, right? Trustee of the trust fund, let us do that. We have to take the money out of the capital reserve for a specific purpose that comports with how the capital reserve was.
Okay, so you just can't, so
So we can't
just
just,
based on invoice, not
So-
on need.
Right, so we can't just say, for instance,
We know-
town meeting approved spending X number of dollars out of capital reserve, give us the money right now, and then we'll dole it out. Unfortunately, that's.
So that's by law, that's not by precedent.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a statute, but it's, you know, DRA would go, they'd be driving up here and
That's fun to watch.
that's,
Um,
sirens blazing.
Okay, so so now we've taken not quite $250,000 for those two invoices
Mhm.
that have been presented. So that I will know and I can communicate to Val in the future, what's our time frame? In other words, all the invoices are coming to us.
Right.
We're reviewing them, taking them over to Diane, okay, for payment. What can I tell them the time frame will be?
Well,
On a normal
I guess
basis?
that brings us to the next set of conversations. We need to have you, the library trustees, bring your money forward to the town in some format, whether it's in a lump sum or for an invoice, and we're gonna run out of capital reserve money at some juncture.
Well, that's gonna probably be by end of October, you could.
Or maybe before that.
Yeah,
So
So-
That's one phone call.
right, but it's that slowing things down as well. We may wanna,
That's a
Proactive.
that's a 2-day.
yeah.
I call Fidelity.
Oh, I
So
I see as far as,
$200,000 worth
as
of
far as
work.
you getting the money.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right,
and then.
but then it
that will
just,
come.
it has to move, so maybe Bowen needs to, I mean, we'd have to have at least a week.
After you get the money?
no,
No, once they
No, I
notify
agree.
of the charges, if you're gonna take 2 days,
Okay, so in other words, we're talking capital reserve money now. After the capital reserve is exhausted,
right,
you get a bill for $150,000 from Bowen, I can
Yeah.
sell $150,000 worth of treasuries and have the money in 2 days.
okay.
right, and
And
then,
that will-
and then
and
we'll
that
put
will-
it in the,
But if they give you the bill on
Payment.
Wednesday, and you make the call on Wednesday,
Yeah,
and you get the money on Friday, they're
It'll
not
be
gonna
the
get
next-
paid for the.
Okay, no,
it'll be
that's-
next week's check.
no, I just don't want to end up in a situation where we're gonna have a 6-week lag like we've had.
Yeah,
Then, as I say, the first one was convoluted, but now that we understand what the process is.
If the invoice is presented to us,
Yeah,
and that may be another,
you know, when it's received,
yeah,
comes into the mail or whatever, I know that the trustee's treasurer is responsive to, I think he got a phone call, said, hey, we need this. He got the process going. It takes them a few days to get the money,
okay,
but not a huge period of time.
okay.
The real problem is, you know, you guys get the invoice, comes to us after a period of time, rather than immediate notification of the trustees, well, you know, we throw it in the pile, and another week or two, it gets to them, he comes, picks up his mail, says, oh, I got a check request, he contacts their funding. We can take all that daylight out as long as we all stay on top of it.
All right, well, as I say, once the capital reserve money is exhausted,
Then your piece
it
becomes,
become a much faster thing
well,
because it's just,
and I think maybe to be a little proactive about it, if they're invoicing you or the library trustees,
Mhm.
then getting a copy of that, whether or not we're gonna pay it that day or not.
because it goes to Diane that day.
She doesn't want to accept anything unless it's been initialed by Gordon, so.
Okay,
We get an email, because they're emailed to us. I look at it, sign it, boom, I don't think of anything. All
okay,
right,
so we'll have a
Yeah.
conversation with her.
so my main question was answered with the first invoice, you cut a check for.
yes,
Okay, that's
I
fine.
signed it on Friday, so.
And is the second
Is it over
invoice
there?
in already?
Because we have a meeting with them tomorrow. Give it to them.
You can check with Diane, I don't know if she's mailed it.
It'll actually be me, Diane, though, but,
I can stop and pick it up
yeah, because I probably won't be back to the office.
tomorrow, no, tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow will be great.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all I want to know, is make sure that was paid.
How's the budget coming?
Oh, was there? What did you say?
Okay, because I know there was a little hiccup there again.
We did our due diligence and we cut some terrible work. We redesigned, we felt the redesign was, could be done without materially affecting the building, and it's gonna be fine.
And it's gonna be wind and water type I.
We're gonna start setting trusses tomorrow. So wind and water tight, certainly by, I had to think of almost that.
Yeah, I mean, it's snowed the
Before the
20th
snow
of
falls.
October
Yes,
last.
we will not be,
Hopefully,
we will not be
yes.
spending money to shovel snow off the decks.
Right, okay, good.
Right.
And the windows and all that are in? Not in the building, but they're out.
They're all void.
They're on.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense to have stuff delivered to the city
Yeah.
grounds.
Yeah.
No, you want to deliver when you
Exactly.
Right.
To shift gears to the budget season, while he's here, do we have a tentative date to start on the budget process
Who, the budget committee?
for the library?
Oh, the library budget. The library budget come up?
Doesn't everybody? Have you guys set a date
No,
that you want
We're
budgets by?
gonna do ours on December 20th. All right,
Okay with me.
we're all working.
We're getting
Did
into
get
the budget
the,
committee on the 29th of December, right?
Yeah.
We did get the cost of living, and increase at 1.7%, we talked about that in a minute, so. Right, when you're looking at wages,
Of 1.7.
I'm sorry.
I thought you said 7.
That's 7%.
Whoa.
Well, that's a selectmen's increase.
Right, yeah. You're wrong.
Great, thank you for
Your
your,
my questions, thank you.
appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you.
All right, the next item of business is with the ever jubilant Dennis Salembo for Parks and Rec.
Come on down.
Oh,
Hey, Dennis.
I'm walking slow as
are you getting older?
I borrow that sheet. I do. I got a knee replacement. 13. This one.
Ah,
Really?
Yeah. Match the other one.
you didn't know that it was that old, did you?
How are you doing? Good, how's everyone doing?
Good.
Yeah. That's it for a reason?
Yes,
Yeah.
keep the roof.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Doing good, welcome to the ball. You want me to just go right into my little report?
Yep,
Please.
that's good.
I just put together a 5-month report, just kind of highlighting what we've done for 5 months and some recommendations. It's actually on both sheets, so you can read that at another date. But I think we'll start first with just kind of a report from the old home days. Thanks to Karen, we just sent out, I didn't know all the technology we have in that place, but the mail merge sent out thank yous, and certainly thank you to all the sponsors, volunteers. It was my first old home days, 3-day of events, and I was pretty impressed. Like I said, the town kind of comes together, and the highlight, of course, was the last day, the picnic. But I think all the events ran pretty well. The road race only had 29 runners, and I'm finding out through the timing company that this year the race was a week later than it was last year. So a lot of the college kids, which normally would have run, were gone. So I think we got to look at that race a little bit and check the date. And I've got some ideas with this report. I didn't include old home days, so I'm saving that for when we get our wrap-up meeting with the old home days, and I've got some serious thoughts on a lot of different things that happened that day. But I know all the dinners went good. The road race, the juggler was outstanding. I thought it was a little expensive, but we had a good crowd, 50 or 60 people, and they were entertained for about an hour, so it was good. The car show, of course, the cargo and boat race was a hoop. You were there for that. Again, we'd like to have some more entries, but it goes quick, and it was a good showing on the beach. And again, I think the town picnic highlighted everything. But the 5-month report is basically all the events that we've run, some recommendations. I think the summer went good. We're cleaning up from the summer now. This coming weekend is we're taking the docks and the swim lines in. Zach Krause will be doing that.
When did the lifeguards stop going to the beach?
Well, 3 out of the 4 were college kids, so they actually, the week before Labor Day,
Okay.
we shut the lifeguard thing down. And I think everyone's stuck with that same problem. You'd love to have lifeguards right up to Labor Day, but, they go back to school, so.
Just, I had, and I hate to interrupt, but, the weekend before Labor Day weekend, I had driven by the beach at 19, and there was a boat full of hooligans docked on the beach.
Hooligans, is that what you said?
They appeared to be hooligans to me, with cases of beer, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who the lifeguard was. I couldn't
Yeah.
pick the person out.
But there was lifeguards on duty.
Were there?
Well, was it the week before?
Yeah. Because I ended up coming to the police department
Yeah.
and then go down.
Yeah, there've been a couple of incidents over the summer, with a similar type thing. People coming to the lifeguard saying that, you know, there's young kids, people over there on that side drinking and not controlling their words, and, you know, what could they do? And, we had a couple of incidents we had to involve the police. But, you know, for the most part, it's like the concerts and stuff have gone real good and well behaved, and of course the presence of the police there.
Well, maybe some scheduled patrolling on the weekends.
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at that lifeguard thing. We were stuck in a situation this year where by the time I come on, we had to book our lessons where we didn't even have instructors. And that's hard to do. It should be the other way around. And again, it's the shortage of lifeguards. And I personally think too that the lifeguard shift is too long. I mean, you couldn't ask anybody to sit 8 hours and watch. You're gonna get lax, you're gonna get tired, you're gonna daydream. And we've had some, you know, a couple of lifeguard meetings. In fact, I asked Mr. Wood here to attend one, and there were a couple, you know, phone complaints I had about them. And we dealt with that. For the most part, they did a good job. The people with the lessons, I think, were outstanding. One is Cal DeWitt's daughter Hannah, and the other is from Massachusetts. And you can just tell people that they're really into the kids, you know. They really get along with the kids relate to them, the parents are like that. And hopefully we get them back. You know, the swim team was somewhat of a disappointment. We only had 4 kids, and I think the organization we were involved in only had 1 meet. So, I mean, we're paying them people, you know, they're splitting $700, and they're putting a lot of time into it for 4 kids. Not sure that, you know, we marketed it the best we could. But I think if that's the case, I mean, we should just let them go to Wolfboro. Wolfboro had about 50 kids. You know, so, and I know a lot of our kids take part in Wolfboro activities, but you know, we share resources with them. Yeah, and of course you talk about the past, and certainly Mary Ann Murphy was dynamite, and I think it's the person. I mean, you can have the best person and terrible facilities, and it's going to go. You know, you could have great facilities and bad work, and it's not going to go. It's that person you get to do it. And you know, we get time to work on that. The Lake Coast, I heard the gentleman talk about the project we're going to do and mention the Lake Coast. We did have inspection of over 300 boats over the summer for about an 8-week period. And that was probably manned maybe 25% of the time. Of course, you know, the weekends were the biggest capacity on that, but
Well, it seemed to me we had better Lake Coast coverage than in past years.
well, unfortunately, we only had 2 people that we paid.
Yeah.
We tried like heck for volunteers, and we didn't have any luck. But those 2 split it quite a bit, and that was a good thing I liked about it. I mean, not the fact that we had 300 inspections. And it's really an educational type thing, I think, both for the workers and the people. But 2 people got some pretty good hours that, you know, were part of that Lake Coast program. So that was good. Again, the concerts, I thought, you know, went over real well. The food, we brought in, you know, over $1,600, and donations almost 1,000. So the biggest thing, I think, is by the time we come on late, we had a shortage of sponsors. And I think the Meredith Bank, you know, they gave us $1,500, which was cut in half from the year before. And we didn't get one other sponsor. So I think we're going to look at that this year and really try and boost that up a little bit. And I think we're going to expand to 6 because, you know, as the season went on, we had 1 cancellation and we moved it towards the end. I think it was August 15th. And, you know, it was starting to get dark, real dark, you know. And if you're there, say 8:30, it's pretty dark down there. There's not a whole lot of lights, you know. So I just worry about the traffic because they're parked all over the place, you know, both on the lot and out the street. So maybe, you know, later in the season we move up the concert in a half hour or so. But We had good volunteers helping us. We had some dynamite specials with the food. Right now, I'm writing a grant. It's actually to the Meredith Bank. They have a foundation, and we're trying to, where that school is, we talked about the 2 areas we fixed up, and that one area with the bark mulch, we're looking to put a gaga pit. You know what that is?
No.
I didn't either. But anyway, the principal brought me in, showed me online, and it's his idea. And it's kind of like an 8-sided pen, you could call it. And kids get inside and they play some great games in there. And if you watch it online, a lot of camps have them, a lot of schools have them. But we gotta get that in by October 15th to the Meredith Bank on that.
How much money are you looking for?
You could build them pretty cheap, but you could, if you look online, there's somewhere between $1,200 and $3,000, so somewhere in the middle. And that would be perfect for that one area. We look at it and it's just a kind of a circle with mulch. What is it? You know, someone said we're gonna have to put blueberry bushes and all that, butterfly bushes and stuff. But that would be perfect there. It's somewhat level, so we could.
The other place to look if you're successful in Meredith is the electric co-op. They do grants.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They give them a $5,000 grant to
Really? There's another company I installed, it's called Game Time. They'll match, of course, they want you to purchase it from them, but
Right.
whatever you buy, they will match. So you spend $50,000, they'll match it. But, you know, it's just kind of getting your feet wet on that. The next event, again, we're looking at this trunk or treat. I'm meeting Thursday with the PPO, and I know nothing about it, but apparently the Recreation Department teams up with them, and they do that trunk or treat. I guess it's a safe way to kind of promote Halloween, so we'll be involved with that. Actually, your sister was asking about a budget item to survey Libby Park.
Right, I'm not certain that's something you need to get involved in.
Okay, well, she called me and I said I'd look it up to you guys, so.
Yeah, there's, that line is, I actually went and walked, and this is completely out of Parks and Rec, the Wolfboro-Tuftonboro line.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Because I'm selling, yeah, I'm selling that piece.
I still haven't seen it yet. I went down there.
Up on the mountain, and it borders Wolfboro. And it's blazed pretty consistently until you get down in Mirror Lake.
Yeah.
And the blazes just kind of disappear. And I didn't see anything in that stretch there by,
I mean, potentially, is that something we can use as recreational area?
sure. I mean, it's a nature preserve, if you will, so you can use it for educational purposes
Mhm.
in your recreational plan.
Can't put in picnic tables and
No.
Right.
No.
charcoal grills or something like that.
Right.
And we can't go in there and cut down a bunch of trees.
Right.
But as a place to go and run programs, it's limited size, so you couldn't take a whole lot of people in there at once, I think. But yeah, no, I mean, it's town-owned. There
Yeah.
are some restrictions on it, but by all means, anything we own, we ought to use.
Yeah, that in conjunction with the trail they're putting in at the Great Meadow and the overlook down here on Cops Pond,
Mhm.
you could get a pretty extensive nature walk, if you will, or visiting the natural elements of Tuftonboro.
Speaking of Cops Pond, have you been involved at all? We have a viewing platform that's falling apart.
I have some info.
What is it?
A
viewing
viewing
platform?
platform
Like-
on Cops Pond. It was built a number of years ago, I think it was an Eagle Scout project. And the support structure is deteriorating, and it's,
I don't even know
almost
what that
apart
is, so
falling in.
someone's gonna have to show me,
So-
I'll have to go see that.
And a year ago, we started on fixing it. I meant to ask Jack today if he was doing something on it. So,
Just the boards are rotted.
Two people have been located, and will be a gift.
Underneath the platform.
They'll be rebuilding now.
So that's ongoing now?
Yes.
I'd like to see it go on at some point.
Yeah?
People give stuff to the town, you have to accept it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just note that I'll be on vacation to Florida, September 21 to the 28th. And then again, my knee would be operating on November 13th. So I'm kind of like in a flux. I really want to get these basketball clinics started at the elementary school. Grades 1 through 3 would be an hour. 4, 5, and 6 would be another hour. But talking at the Libby Museum, I was buying some mums. They're fantastic. Great deal. But there was a lady there that teaches Tai Chi. And we're looking to try and get her maybe up in here to do that. Tai Chi program. But we're coming back with a CPR in the fall. We're trying to get a painting class here. But the actual basketball clinic, me working with the kids, again, with my knee being operated, being on vacation, we're gonna have to just kind of see how that goes. Yeah.
So we need to get, how's your budget coming?
Well, I think, as far as I'm concerned, I'm over a little bit. But I think the summer hours are gonna be a lot more than what's happening now. Like last week, I worked 8 hours. You know, so I think it's gonna level off and be right on that.
Have you looked at all of your department budget?
I haven't really, no. You know, all the money that we brought in and the money I've spent, I still don't have a figure of like, say, how much we spent on concession as of how much we brought in, type of thing. And I got things here from the old home days, which, you know, I'm gonna put together on what we brought in different areas and stuff like that, so. But I think as far as my salary, I think I'm pretty right, I'm gonna be close come the end of the year.
So you need to create a budget for 2020.
I would, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, really.
When does that happen?
Now.
Okay.
So whenever you can get at it.
April Fools.
So just so you know.
That's right.
You trying to get back?
Yeah. Diane handles all the budget process,
Yeah.
but Karen can
Walk you through it.
walk you through it and get you some of the background stuff.
Okay.
You need to put
And
in.
if you feel like you need to expand the budget for some reason, you're gonna have to defend that expansion
I have to defend it.
to us and also to the budget committee.
Okay.
So if it's a good reason, I'm sure it'll work. If it's just pipe dream, it probably won't. So
Sounds good.
we'd like to keep the Parks and Rec active. As the committee met recently?
This Thursday. Back this Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, good.
Are you gonna attend that, or are you still?
I don't know, am I still on that? Oh,
You
Lloyd's
you
out.
are, huh?
I'm not.
Oh, I am.
I have a question.
Jeez, I guess I'm.
Yeah.
I have 2 comments.
Go ahead.
First of all, thank you for purchasing the liners and the trash at Melvin.
Yeah.
And you, Clay, and I are trying to find a vendor who will take care of 4 stops.
That'd be great.
I spoke to Dave Ladd, and he's working on that with me. He's worked on that. The idea, folks, is that the trash gets picked up and doesn't have to go to his facility, and
Yeah.
and whatever the last thing, I like what you said, sir. The last thing we need is a kid to cut his foot. The other thing is, I was up in Tamworth, and I came across the attached flyer is for up north storage
Is
containers.
that right on 16? I
Yes.
saw that, yeah.
The units are various sizes and seem to be in newer and good shape. My thought is that they could be used by the rec department to put tables and other equipment in. I spoke to Clay, and he can find a place that they get stored up there where we watched.
Are they about $3,000?
I am not sure.
No, that's the current rate through NRA to buy the containers is over 4 for a 40 foot. 40 foot, 8 foot high,
Yeah.
8.5 foot high, is around 4,000, 4,200 for in really good condition.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Wolfboro and Ossipee put me onto it. NRA will pay for half of it.
Oh.
So here's where,
National Rifle Association.
and NRRA? It depends, yeah. It's actually, New Hampshire is beautiful. The bottom line is, sir, I just want to say thank you. You hit the ground running, you made it.
All right, thank you guys, yeah, have a good day.
Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you. Look forward to seeing your budget.
And I can run faster skiing than you can in the beach.
Once I get the new medal, then.
Okay, next
Travel safe, sir.
next item for business is Clay Gallagher and the transfer station.
Thank you for waiting.
I don't know. Karen. Should dump and pay next time.
What's he saying about me?
Put too many things on the agenda.
I know,
One.
I've wondered.
Oh, thanks.
Monthly totals for August, 13 solid waste compactors, 17 CD containers, 4 plastic containers, and 1 glass. Just a little more info on the glass container. The last pickup, we had 17.4 tons. That costs us basically a haul fee and then a crushing fee from NRA down at Rochester at the waste management facility. And that totals $42 per ton. So when you talk about avoided costs, and a good example of avoided costs is we can get rid of the glass, recycle it, 100% used, at $42 a ton rather than putting it in the...
So the 42 is revenue to us.
No,
That's
that's cost.
That's our cost.
That's our cost to get rid of it. Had it gone in the compactor and we got rid of it that way, it'd be $110 a ton.
Right.
So our savings is basically $68 a ton. We don't see that,
No.
but it's
Well,
considered.
It's an avoided cost.
It's an avoided cost.
Okay, so just for clarification.
Okay,
You got costs of $133 to haul
correct.
it, and then $609 to crush it.
$609 total.
But that's-
That's $35 per ton to crush it.
Okay. Okay. That's, so 609 is not per ton.
Correct.
Great.
So it's 609 total for crushing, 133, so it's 742 divided into the 17.42 tons.
Okay.
That gives you that $42 per ton. Electronics container, Freon, propane. Having a little bit of problems with the propane. We're getting rid of it slowly but surely. But our guy that does that is having some issues with the propane and getting it processed. So we are going to have hopefully another pickup on Thursday. Get rid of all the Freon, probably half of the propane. And I got 2 scrap metal pickups scheduled for Friday. As well as we had 2 last year. I'm still waiting for the tons of the revenue on that. Non-ferrous, we made a trip down to Harding Metal with our non-ferrous. 661 pounds, $725 in revenue. That's basically an extra. That's copper wires and
Yep.
revenues through August, 77,481. Last year at this time was 53,964. So you can see we're a pretty good clip ahead. And you can, see the tables, page 2, 3, and 4 gives you an idea of. I still, I think I'm gonna start doing a month back so you have the exact numbers in here rather than the red X's. So I'll just slide in with either that or move the meeting with you guys to the 3rd week or 4th week. That way you have up-to-date numbers. Just general info, starting an itinerary in May. put all the CIP entries in. And I also prioritize them, from top to bottom. Basically compactor 1 replacement, and, you know, we'll have a meeting to talk the details and all this stuff. But compactor 1 replacement, replace or repair a baler, portable changeable message trailer, backhoe replacement, compactor 2 replaced, weight scales, and maintenance set storage facility.
When are you expecting the backhoe replacement on your
I think I put in for 2024 or 2022. Now, 15, you know, that's a 2007 backhoe, so 2022, it's beyond the 15 years, but it's right at the.
How many hours?
I don't know off the top of my head, I don't know.
And the compactor 1, you're looking at 2020?
Compactor 1 is, I have them all right here. Compactor 1 2020. The replace or repair the baler 2020. Portable changing message trailer, and that one I did bring my. You all probably have seen the one in Multiboro. The trailer sign they have in Multiboro, they have one that's right up across the subway right now, coming this way, and the other one's in front of, just before the school on the left-hand side of the road. It's basically, this is a picture of it. Their version is a little bigger one. You've seen this.
Yes.
Yep.
And on here, this is to, you know, answer a whole bunch of questions, but that's a sign that blinks a little bit, but it goes, it'll do 3 pages of, 3 or more pages, 3 lines for each page. You've seen that, right? But,
Yes.
anyway. And I went through and did a pretty good search. There's a dealer in Bow, called, the name is Vermac. And I think that's where most people get theirs. They're certified with the police and with DES and DOT and all that. Versus getting the overseas model that's maybe a little bit cheaper, but you have nowhere to go when stuff goes wrong with it. And I talked to Andy. You know, basically, this solves a lot of signage. Everybody brings up signage all the time. They bring up advance notice. They bring up, but it can be used for a whole bunch of different events. A good example is Molten Grove. When they bought theirs, they used this the first time for household hazardous waste collection day, and they started a week to 10 days out. They quadrupled the number of people that took household hazardous waste to their collection. So it does work, getting a sign that somebody's going to pay attention to for short term works.
Well, I can see the highway department or the road agent using it for road projects, and I can see the police.
Right, and you can also get this with, you can also get it with radar. And I, you know, as we get a little bit further along with this, I'll talk with Andy about, you know, it's one of these, your speed is, you know, kind of thing. So, and that is that's a small addition as an option onto the.
Several towns have done that.
Yes.
What's the ballpark of what?
Without the radar, it's about 14.5. With the radar, it's around 16.
On your compactor, do you have a number on
On compactor 1,
that? Yeah.
it is, I have the, it's $30,000. That is for a complete replacement, because you have to budget for the worst case. And if the shell doesn't have to be replaced, we can save money from that.
And on the baler, how much is that?
The baler, 2 options. It's our oldest baler, but it's our best baler. It's the one we bale OCC cardboard in, and that gives us a couple extra pounds per bale than the other newer ones give. For replacing the piston and the chute the piston comes in, they were talking,
Was it 11K?
it was,
The cost for a new piston in case is almost as much as a new baler.
yes, it was in the neighborhood of, I think $11,000 to $12,000
Okay.
just to replace the piston. Now that gives you, a 2 or 3 month warranty on the piston, on the rest of the machine.
And the whole machine
The
costs?
whole machine costs 14 or 15. So,
And there is a grant.
there is a grant possible from New Hampshire the Beautiful through NRA. In the past, we've gotten in the neighborhood of $2,000 to $3,000 for a
Yeah.
For the backhoe, grant would be available, and that could be up to $5,000.
Well, the backhoe isn't for a few more years. I think we need to know the hours on that before.
Right. The and obviously, the older that gets, the price goes down as far as what we can get for
The
the
value,
used,
right.
which is why I would recommend replacing it in 15-year versus. I mean, that's what we did when we first bought it. We bought it used,
Right.
and we planned on 15-year lifespan of the machine, so. And did you want? That was 2022. The compactor 2 replacement was 2023.
Okay.
And that, I just guesstimated at 35.
Yeah. All right.
And,
We got the, we're moving on to your budget. We got the cost of living increase, so you can figure out your wages. We haven't voted on it, but I'm sure we will. It's
Okay.
1.7%.
okay,
And how's your budget going?
I was in, it's up, it's getting there.
Okay.
I was crash coursed on the CIP, trying to get that done.
Yeah, that's fine.
By the fifth, so. Get it up, get it on the paper.
Use mine.
Yep. The generator, last time we had a briefing, Scott was working on the phase lights. He tried to put them in. They didn't have all the right stuff. so we can get him in. He is redone it, and it's supposed to be going in today. This morning, hopefully. Boiler, we have paid the down payment.
Yep.
Anybody know the status of that?
Nope. Well, talk to Jack. He's in communication with Bubba,
Ed.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
I don't know,
How much you gonna need in this year's budget?
I think we just planned 5,500, I think. Isn't that, I think that's what he said.
Sounds good.
And I just saw a couple of messages about Stantec. Is there,
We have some correspondence.
That's what I sent him.
what was is there another report that's due?
There's supposed to be an April one. So to back up a bit, we had the year end for 2018, and Mary Gill mentioned we never saw our April one. So I approached Stantec and asked them for that, and they said they would have it last week. Called for a status update, there was confusion, he's sending it for you to sign at your next meeting. I'm
That's
not
what,
quite sure. We had to approach them.
the one that DES called about, or you gave us a
That's
message.
done, that's all.
That's done, right?
Yeah.
So this is a different one? Okay. My question would be,
Do we need to look at the letter? It's in correspondence. Mr. Chairman?
a letter from Santa?
Stantec, yes. Right? I put it in the
Yeah,
green
this
folder.
email back and forth, I honestly don't know which, we don't have anything for your signature or anything today, but, I think the concern with people is we're having to approach them to ask them for information, and follow up with the company, and DES followed up saying they didn't have a 2018 report, we had to follow up for our April 2019 report, things like that.
yeah, I mean, the advantage of using them is that they speak DES and they keep us straight.
Right.
Not recently.
And I just, you know, I don't know what the status is with this, as far as contractual with them and
Well, we talked about putting it out for bid this year.
You and I had this conversation,
okay.
This is the second instance where DES doesn't have the paperwork that Stantec is supposed to provide. Is that the gist of it?
I know it was a requirement for DES at the end of last year. I'm not sure if this April one is more for, like they take increments perhaps throughout the year and then give a final report to DES at the end of the year. I'm not sure. But this is probably building up to that report for this year, is my guess.
I have a couple of other concerns. The paperwork from last year said that Dave Allwine was not the contact person and that there was a woman. Evidently, he's back in the picture.
Right.
Do you know anything about
I
that?
have no clue, no clue. Every indication that I have is he's still our point of contact.
Okay. The next thing is that the last bill had, what, $400 in fees and money that was owed from last year's budget?
There was some from last year's budget.
Okay. And you have negotiated with them
Right.
energetically to get their bills in on time, right?
Right.
I have another problem. They call up to ask if you're in your office, and they charge us $45 for a phone call. There's something going on here. And we're not talking about the seat that they showed up at a meeting and didn't have a report on a completed investigation, right?
Right. That's, yeah.
There's something going on here. Am I characterizing it the right way?
Well, yes. I mean, that's the reason I'm asking the question, because I've heard the same grumblings. It may be worth having, Dave come in or something and review our,
Yeah, I don't think the email chain isn't all that informative.
no.
I
Right.
mean, obviously, they're working on the 2018 report, which seems a little.
Well, they did the 18.
The 18 is done.
Okay.
At least the way I read it, the 18 is done and submitted. And
Okay.
you signed something for that.
I did.
Okay, and now there's another issue,
Too many reports to keep track of.
right? And that's him saying,
Right.
I'll back water a little bit. I want to be fair to a guy who isn't here to defend himself.
well, not,
We've already talked before about that we're gonna put this out for bid. So, I mean, why are we having this discussion? We put it out for proposals, we get proposals in, and as part of our decision process, these sorts of things come into the mix. If the contractor wants to come in and talk about some of the deficiencies he's had in the past as a way of helping us be comfortable that in the future things are gonna be on a different track, then that's great. But the first step is we're gonna put it out for bid and see if he's the only guy that brings a proposal in, then we've got another issue. So, but, we have talked ad infinitum in the past about deficiencies with this company's relationship with us, so.
well, I'm pretty supportive of them. I think they do a really good job. It's just my inclination, that's why I brought it up,
Yeah,
is I saw that same message.
You're doing due diligence.
good job has a number of facets to it, including that you're filing the correct reports, to the correct people, when they're due.
Right.
So, yeah.
Can we ask you and Karen to work on a bid proposal? You understand these contracts a little bit more than I do, so.
Or would you prefer not? Okay, yeah,
Okay. The new stickers are in. I gotta move this along.
okay, I'm basically, yeah, that's it.
And swap shop's doing okay.
Yes. And I have, for your reading, your convenience, this is a summary of the Household Hazardous Waste Day, and it's a comparison with all the towns that participated, how much Tuckenborough put in us. And again, I said last time, Carrie Long did a great job up there and got nothing but positive reviews from them.
And this is a copy of what I read the minutes.
Okay, you're still looking into the mixed paper issues. I'm sure at some point in time that'll come up again.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
And have you made any determination on brush removal? Do you have a contractor?
No, I have one that I've talked to, and we'll probably move with him temporarily until we can get a chipper that's serviceable.
A local hauler, and it's what,
Yes.
$500 a load?
$500 worth, which is the same as what we were paying.
I know in Wolfboro, private places where associations pay $900 a load, so you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, that's one of those grabbing trucks that.
And you have money in the budget to do that, right?
I do. The 1.7.
Sounds good.
I got a couple of things. The safety inspection from this year, you got a copy of that, right?
No. I didn't get any copy of that.
the departments get copies, the signed off inspections?
That's
I
when
don't
self-
know, I don't know.
That was when you
That's-
guys came
I'm not
around.
sure how that
I
works.
did not.
Okay.
I asked.
I assume it's something Heather provides, I don't know.
All right, well, we need to make sure that each of the departments gets a copy of their report, because deficiencies, how are they gonna address the deficiencies if they don't know what they are?
Right.
So, and there were several things that we did, so that, I would just follow up on that. Can you get a copy of that for Tony?
Mhm.
Yeah. We've had, the other thing I wanted to touch on is Island Trash Day, okay? We continue to get input on inconvenience of doing it during the week. We agreed that
Do it Friday.
doing it Friday is as close to the weekend as we can make it without having a delivery on Saturday. If we wanted to look at keeping it on Saturday with some additional cost built into it, what would we be, how would that work? In other words, my understanding is right now, because of the arrangement you have with Waste Management, there isn't any additional charge other than what we normally, the poll charges and the disposal fees and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it's, they bring us an extra container, set it up at another location, and we pay all the normal fees that we pay. I'm just wondering, to keep it on Saturday, and again, it has to be in a setup that people aren't done with stuff in advance, which means it has to show up on Saturday morning or whatever, so is there a different hauler that does Saturday work? This would be an over and above, an extra to what we have.
I don't know,
paid in
I don't know
advance.
anybody that does, that will,
That drops.
will schedule the pickup on the weekend.
Okay.
You know, the haulers have a, usually they have an emergency service guy on standby,
Mhm.
but they aren't gonna use him to drop a scheduled can
Mhm.
and then come back 4 hours later and pick it up. I can do that on Friday.
Right.
Well, one phone call to Waste Management and say, how much would it cost us to have you deliver on
I've
Saturday?
asked that question, they aren't gonna do
They
it.
won't do
They
it.
will not do it on Saturday.
So how about somebody like,
Yeah,
how about somebody like Dumpster Depot, for instance, that, you know, this is somebody that we don't normally use, but do they do weekend work? What I'm trying to get my arms around is, if we want to keep it where it's accessible for the folks on the islands on Saturday, we can't do it the way we've done it in the past because of the way they're serviced. Is there some different way that we can deal with it? And the cost of doing this is going to be, you know, we're going to have to budget $5,000 or whatever it is. Some options for us to look at to make it available on Saturday. And I'm right with you with respect to we can't drop it off on Friday and expect to fill it on Saturday morning because it gets filled up overnight with stuff that shouldn't be going in there. But is there some different approach that could be taken to collect on Saturday?
For example, could someone with a 10-wheeler, you dump the stuff in there, put the tarp over it, and they drive it to the landfill?
It's not, is turnkey open on Saturday?
no, I don't think so.
So how are they gonna drive?
Well,
I'm throwing darts here.
Again, the situation is that the people that we're doing this for, that are here on the weekends, because the way it's been working, it's been filled up in advance, it's not available to them. If we move it to Friday, it's not available to a lot of them because of their schedules, and the effect is it takes it takes away the opportunity for them. They aren't the reason that it can't be dropped off Friday night. It's not the island people that are filling it up overnight. It's other people that come along.
That's totally wrong.
And,
I will look at other possibilities,
okay,
but it's totally wrong. And this, I'll look into it.
I had 4 island people tell me that they brought their stuff in the night before. I've had four landowners on islands tell me that.
And
They were matter of fact, they weren't complaining.
I don't want to,
it's just, I'm just asking that we look at other options to keep it on Saturday and to avoid pre-dumping.
Hire someone to sit there.
Or do away with it altogether.
Or what?
Do away with it altogether.
Yeah.
And if it's gonna become a real big issue, I'm old enough so I don't need to listen to it. I mean, Friday, I don't see Friday as a problem, but let's at
it's
least.
not a problem. The same people that are saying Friday is a problem sit there with binoculars from 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday until Friday night and make up numbers of people that dump in the container. Okay, so they're there Friday. If the service is open, the service is open. If it's not open, it's not open. I'm sorry.
Let's entertain some alternatives, and if there are no alternatives, then we'll just keep it the way it is. All right, thanks, Clay.
Thank you.
The swap shop was gonna bring us to those, but now it's island.
It's always something, yeah.
All right, next order of business is budget reviews. First budget to review is the direct assistance.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
We've lost one of our prime customers for this, but I think that there will be customers in the future, given the state of the economy. So we've got listed 11,500 for shelter. We've spent 8,000 so far this year. 2,500 for fuel, and we spent nothing. 500 for medical services, and we spent nothing. 2,000 for food, and we spent nothing. 5,000 for electrical and telephone, and we spent $387.34. And miscellaneous, whatever that is, 250, and we spent 150. So currently we've spent approximately 40% of our budget in there.
Or 2/3 a year.
2/3 of the year.
Or maybe halfway, depending upon if you look at
When it was posted.
the cold weather seasons, yeah.
So,
Well, I'm gonna suggest that we budget the same amount as we budgeted this year.
I'm gonna second.
Only because this is something that you never know where you're gonna.
right, in 18, we spent $10,800. And in 14, we spent $29,053, so 14 was
Was the high.
the high year.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna second Bill's motion with the following comment. Through my extrapolation and knowledge of the situation, we have nonprofits this year that probably help us out to the tune of about $35,000. Now, what happens if in June they can't continue? I don't know that, I don't think that, but this is a safety net, and I don't want to underfund.
Okay, it's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
The next budget is patriotic purposes. There will be an invoice coming forward from the Legion for $1,500. We had some personnel changes.
All right. So I will move that we budget $1,500 in 2020.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Gifts and donations is the next budget. Should I be giving you the numbers, Karen?
I'm good, thanks. I mean,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Historically, we spent $120.15, $431.16, $135.17, $250.18. Got $500 in the budget. We've expended $15.
I'll move that we budget the same amount, $500 in 2020.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Long-term bonds and notes, this is the payment on the central fire station. Payment due for 2020 is on $153.71, which is pretty close to what it is every year.
Yep.
This is the principal payment, not the interest.
Correct.
I will move that we budget same for 2020.
Is that seconded?
Yes, it was.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next is interest payments on long-term bonds and notes. This is for the central fire station. And the interest payment would be $30,620.
That's right off of the loan repayment schedule. So I move that we,
Right. So the interest payment goes down annually. It was $34,446 last year. And next year, or the year after next, it'll be $26,791. So we're asked to budget $30,620.
so move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And in the signature file, we have a tax letter on map lot 1629 for $1,903.13.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Just two signatures on this. The next item for signature is a right to burial for Joyce Sacramone. I'll move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Sorry, I was just looking at this.
Okay. The next item was submitted today. And did you have a question on this, Lloyd, on the timber cut?
I'd just like it properly reviewed,
So you want,
I also don't want to set a precedent if someone walks in or
Right.
feel
Okay.
intimidated on camera.
so we'll wait to sign that at our next, we could sign it Friday.
Yes,
That's fine.
that's reasonable.
Friday the 20th, you have a work session? Is that-
Well, no, we're gonna come in and sign checks.
But it needs to be
Yeah, it's a
Need to
meeting.
vote.
voted, right? So
Can do that.
can't do that,
You know.
which means it'll be
A week from
a week
today.
and a half, yeah. All right, so I know he delivered it because he wants to get started.
What part of the review process do you think would be missing if we were to grant this today?
I don't know, I haven't studied it for
I mean, well, I'm not sure if this is my place, but I have a suggestion, if you'd like, you could approve it,
So
pending my,
Pending your
pending my approval.
review.
But that's just a thought.
I'd compromise with that.
make a motion.
So moved.
All right,
Second.
all those in favor?
Thank you.
You're
Aye.
welcome.
Thank you for bailing me out.
Okay.
You did you sign it?
I thought we were doing it subject to,
Yeah.
right, so we,
Oh, wait until she's,
yeah,
all
so
right.
we can sign
Okay,
it individually.
Yeah, that's, yeah, okay.
okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
next item is Selectmen's update. Anything new, brothers?
Last year, the consumer price index was 2.7%. This year, the rate is 1.7%. I have my copy, which is.
Yeah, I think we all got it.
Yeah.
If there's no discussion, I'll move that we set that for purposes of budget.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
And then there's the adjusted waste scale that reflects that takes effect January 1st.
Right.
She's done the math, and I have no problem accepting that.
Did you check the math? Because I didn't.
Only on one of them.
I didn't do all of them.
I mean,
It was an Excel calculation, and I did spot check a couple, but
okay.
Yeah.
All right, is that a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I
All
assume
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
the math is
Well, yeah, I hope so.
okay. The other thing is, I liked your comment about doing IT services and combining
Purchasing.
like this, and I submitted a copy under correspondence. It was the best practices for municipalities, and it was a highlighted copy, came out of the Town and Country magazine. So it will be in correspondence.
Okay. Anything from Bill?
Planning board continues to have interesting public input on the Farm Island subdivision. The applicant presented a revised plan that included 10 lots rather than 12, addressing some previous observations about whether the lot size was in fact large enough when you go to the, 1,000-year flood level or whatever it was. There are different dam levels, and depending upon which one you work, you could come out with one where the lot was undersized. So they reworked their plan, 10 lot subdivision. The plan and all of the information that backs it up are going to third-party review with Horizons Engineering, who of course was here for a different project today. And the hearing will be continued at our October 3rd meeting. So Joe can tell you it was a long,
Did you tell them we had a special guest?
we had a special guest.
Yeah, our representative, Glenn
Oh,
Cordello.
yeah, he was.
Haven't seen him for a while.
He was in attendance, yeah. And it did get a little bit, there was a little snarkiness going on back and forth, which is unfortunate, but understandable. A lot of people that are very passionate about the situation, and I'll mention again what I had before, which is that the best opportunity that you have to protect property is when it's available, and the best way to protect it is to take some action before it goes through a transaction, somebody else buys it and goes in a different direction than what you would like to see. So anyway, the process is moving along slowly. The applicant did agree to an extension on the consideration window since when he filed it and when it was accepted, it was incomplete. It took him, 6 weeks to bring the additional information forward. So the planning board decision period has gone from the normal 65 days to 130 days, which should be plenty of time to get the third-party review back and deal with other issues. I would like to think that an October 3rd meeting we'll have enough information to close it out. But
Is it the next scheduled meeting? Or
that's the next scheduled continuation this year. We have another planning board meeting next Thursday, and we will deal with other business at that meeting.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, because the one on the 5th was single issue, as we anticipate the one on October 3rd. So that's all I have.
I had a question. Do you think that the master plan will be discussed the next meeting?
I doubt it. Only because when we last talked about it, we hadn't had any further input from the contractor. So I might be wrong, stuff might show, but I would be surprised.
And Mr. Chairman, there were two other issues. I have a CIP meeting coming up, and I'll just give them the folder. There were two, first of all, thank you for the department heads for stepping up to the plate and, making a reasonable deadline. It's appreciated. There were a couple of items in there that the replacement of the tent-wheeler and the redoing out front of the garage, and I just did my copy with a question mark. So that's that. The other thing is we currently are waiting for 6 job evaluations. Have any come in the last 2 weeks?
No.
And we have a couple that we need to work on. So I'm saying that this one out is
We'll
nice
put a
as
list
possible.
together and let's get those department heads in here and find out what's going on. All right. As I mentioned earlier, I did a little perambulation. I'm gonna make it subject to the RSA that requires us to perambulate, and don't get a little credit for that.
Yeah.
But I did notice that when I got to Mirror Lake, the blazing was deficient at existing at all. And it's swampy down in there, so. But that said, all of the rest of the line, all the way up to Goldsmith Hill, is not only blazed, but it's walkable. Yes, it's reasonable. So I think we may want to look at getting some of that done. And I'm absolutely positive that Shane is suffering from Wolfboro stacking his wood on our land down on Buttonwood Park. So I did contact a surveyor to see what a line would cost, and it's like a $600 or $700 item.
Let's budget that for
So
next year.
I think we need to delineate our property ownership.
Yeah.
For phone numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think if you don't, then
Yeah.
everything goes down. I did something else, but I can't remember what it was. It's been so
Oh,
long since I saw you guys.
The complaint in the country village, and you did a report on it.
Right, as well as, I didn't report on suicide, but there was one down there.
Yes.
And when you talk about Farm Island, Jack Parsons, how the cease and desist was kept out not to do his job
Yes.
for using the temple platform without permit, not getting it. So Farm Island becomes a thorn in everybody's side. Moving on to correspondence. We've gotten any number of letters from the island people who seem to think they pay more taxes than anybody else in town. Okay, and I was remiss in not going to this last one, but I will be going to the Carroll County Broadband Committee, STEM Aviation Committee in Albany on the week of the 16th, whenever they set the date.
Is that the one that they're meeting in Wakefield?
Yeah, 9/18 in San Bruno.
Did they set, so it is 9/18 in Wakefield?
Yeah, it might be, you might see the next piece of paper, might be.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Congress has decided they like the initiative. I see it. It's 10 a.m. on September 18th at the Wakefield Town Hall. Okay. A letter of thanks from the Tufton Central School to the police department. I was hoping the fire department would be here today because I want to recommend that the captain of the fire department get a commendation because he rescued my cat from a tree
Yes.
just the other day.
Yes.
He did a spectacular job. Brooks is gonna start or doing a baseline determination, but they're gonna do some work this October, I guess, down
At the beach, right?
at 19 Mount Beach.
That's Mira Vista, is that right?
Yeah.
Their problem's getting
Oh, they're
high-speed
They're
internet.
gonna try to get high-speed internet in.
And there's something in there from their contractor back to Fairpoint about Fairpoint's increasing the pole charge for the line from
$55,000.
like 10 grand to 55 grand or something. Yeah,
Right.
but we made a slight
Yeah,
mistake in our,
a rounding error.
in our costing. So,
And he offered to help Tufton Borough with their negotiations, if you want to get to that point. I probably should have put a little more information, you're probably looking at that thing about the interest, right?
Right.
Sorry about that, I should have put a note. So it was past the point that Jackie could waive it, that's what that.
Okay, so
That should-
we've been asked to waive interest, but we did, in the amount of $33.24 on a late payment on property taxes. And it seems to have been just an oversight on their part. They've been taxpayers for over 25 years. I'll make a motion that we waive the $33.24. Oh, really, we've been here that long? We're gonna hardball these people?
For purposes of discussion, I second.
Okay, what's the discussion? No, Lloyd, you got the floor.
No, so,
You're sure?
you're fair, I understand.
I mean, I'm not gonna skin somebody for, plus we need some island people on our side, aren't they, in Cow Island? Yeah.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we've got Ice Fest coming up in January 25th. And
They're looking
just
to
see if
schedule
that's
it
okay, and if we have a police presence there, I guess we'll talk to them.
And I put this note on there. I know there was a police presence before, but as busy as that is, I think it's risen to a level where we should require a police detail. And that way, whoever is on duty can do their normal stuff and not have to be down there.
And there isn't,
Schedule a detail, the
Dedicated police officer.
yeah, the vendor pays the cost of having the police there. That detail is just there to deal with the issues that may arise at the lakefront, and we're not.
well, I gotta guess that there's a certain amount of beer drinking that goes on there.
Yes,
Okay, so probably not a bad idea.
Yep.
So, do we want?
So what we need to
Do
do
we want to
is,
vote on this, or how do we want
I-
to move forward?
I'll make a motion that we approve the event for beverage craft beer for January 25th, subject to
Dedicated
a
police.
dedicated police detail in addition to the other,
Okay.
Wow.
We don't charge them anything for this,
for the detail. We
Well,
don't
no,
charge
no,
them
for the event.
That's right, there's
So
no
this-
event
This would be just a
cost, but
cost.
other than
Right.
things like porta potties and paying the police detail. and so-
Police detail is insurance.
Yeah.
Everything
Okay,
is-
the next item is the primary.
Second.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, second, I'm sorry, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Jeez. When you cancel the primaries.
It's getting late. We've been here for 3 hours.
I know, I'm gonna run through the rest of this.
Yep.
Primex has got a $1,380.78 premium holiday. Do we want to check, or do we want to put it towards our?
I'd say have them send us a check.
I have no problem with the holiday like we've done in the past, but bow to your wishes.
Well, so the question from a budgeting and a tracking standpoint is,
Yeah, let's have a check.
if we have a holiday, then we budget less money for it, and then the next year,
Right.
you're kind of like, well, what's that?
Let's
all
add
about?
it to income.
Yeah.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. A question on the SB 38 highway aid funds. You want to hold this for discussion with Jim?
That's
I believe so,
yeah.
yes.
Okay, was that your note? Go on, sorry.
I think I put that.
That was
Karen?
Karen's note,
Can
yeah.
you give us some notes again?
Many.
Okay, that's road agent stuff.
Cybersecurity best practices.
That's what I told you about.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's a little light reading.
yeah. And you have a copy of it in your magazine, right?
Is
It's
it
in the
in,
magazine.
um,
What's it? Yeah, it's in Town and Country.
All I did is highlight the.
what is it called, Town and Country? It's not
It's
horse and
interesting.
hound.
Horse was victimized.
Okay, the Department of Transportation is setting up meetings for speaking to them. What are their meetings? District 1, which is with us, is Michael Cryans, Wednesday 9/11 in Claremont, Michael Cryans 9/11 in Lebanon, Michael Cryans, Conway, that's the one we want to go to.
I think so.
Okay, I'll go. Do we all want to go?
No, I don't think so.
Because I know Mike.
Well, and it will also
We'll
give you
ask
an
about-
opportunity to talk
Talk
about
about
the
1909.
everything, yeah.
Perfect, great.
It'll work out nice.
There's a flu shot clinic at the Central Fire Station in Tuftonboro.
October
Out of
16th.
pocket expenses without insurance coverage is $32. My feeling is if you have no insurance, we still should have you get a flu shot. So look to our local welfare budget for help if you can't afford the $32.
Yes.
Don't let that keep you away.
October 16th.
October 16th, I'm sorry.
How good's the resolution on that lens?
I could zoom right into the,
Really? This is a letter from Tim Yee, obviously from this part of the world, about cell phone coverage in Tuftonboro and he works for Verizon. And he too is concerned, but I don't believe he's anywhere near as concerned as we are. But he's gonna meet with Chief Thompson at some point.
Do you want him to come in? I think, did I put that on there? I think that's what they kind of, that's about putting the tower at
Okay,
the
I was
fire
planning on
station.
heading up to the fire station possibly Friday, take
Okay,
some photos. Would that be okay with you? If I have any additional questions, I will give you a call. So I think Tim needs to be notified that, yeah, he can take pictures, but we need to meet with him too
At some point.
at some point.
okay.
And if Lloyd wants to meet with him on Friday,
You know?
Is this a duplicate to what Police Region did?
no.
Cell
Well,
phone?
this is
I
Tim
think
Z.
I think it's related to, it's a cell phone coverage area. That big issue, but it's one of the vendors and for some reason Chief Thompson's got us here, so that's great. I'd say let it percolate for a while, see what develops and maybe.
Oh,
It's gotta be better than the one next to Clay.
I'm not ready to talk about the chipper today. New Hampshire Clean Diesel Program, the grant,
Just
they're
information.
gonna have $7,000 available. We need that consumer index, we got the wages all set. And chain link fence is getting paid for. CIP proposals are in, hopefully we'll have a report from CIP so we can determine what the budget's gonna be.
I do have some in there for you, maybe another day though, I assume some that were from last year that you might want to put in again.
Any other business?
Oh, you're talking about CIP from us?
Yeah,
From
that
us?
paper clip thing, yeah, like the Tuftonboro Neck Bridge, just put in a bit of information there from HEB about how the state's funding's changed and things have been put in the back burner, funding probably won't be available.
The bridge.
No.
The bridge.
Yeah, but I can put that in for another day.
Well, I think that's another thing I can bring up with Michael Cryans when I go up there and meet with him,
Okay.
because they're gonna be talking about highways and bridges too.
Yep.
One last question for you, please, on that stuff is the slow children playing signs, is that in there? There's a resident that asked for
Yeah, Butternut Lane,
Butternut and Birch, the chief and the road agent are fine with it, they just wanted your approval.
really?
Mm-hmm.
They talk amongst themselves, but they never come in. When was the last time we saw the road agent? All right, so the people on Butternut Lane and Birch Lane are looking for a slow children sign, slow children playing.
Mhm.
I honestly do not think we have any slow children here in Tuftonboro, but I'm in favor of putting signage up anyway.
Second.
So I make a motion that we allow this to happen.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I assume the town will pay for that, correct?
Well, it's our road,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's,
Oh, but the slow children could pay for it. You could have a bake sale. Any other business?
who made the proposal on the go slow signs for Butternut and Birch?
Oh, you wanna know the people?
Yes, I do.
That might fall under 91A.
Well,
Pelletier.
Fellas, yeah,
Volunteers.
okay, no, I just wanna know,
Yeah,
thank you.
I didn't wanna bring any names up.
yeah.
Hey, there's nobody here, we're all family and,
Yeah, except for that camera.
yeah.
Are you related to that camera? Cause I'm not. Any other business?
Move your adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So wonderful, gentlemen.